Bojo, Annie, hello. Jasmine and Dishnika's Sunbi Dojba. Thank you for taking the time to watch our recorded presentation today on cannabis use during pregnancy. This comes to you during National Addictions Awareness Week for 2020. It is Monday, November 23rd, and the theme for this year's National Addictions Awareness Week is Change Begins With Me. Figure out how to move to the next slide. So our agenda for today I'm going to go over a quick introduction on cannabis so we're all on the same page and we all have the same information. I'm going to go over some frequently asked questions about cannabis use during pregnancy. Then I'm going to step into the different kinds of scientific studies that have been used to try to explain cannabis use during pregnancy. And there are currently 3 major studies that we get most of our information from. From these studies, I'll share some of their general findings and some of the findings that you will see a child who has been exposed to cannabis while their mother is pregnant. We will look at some of their developmental stages. We'll also look at some harm reduction strategies. So the most common question I hear around pregnancy and cannabis is someone asking, is there a safe amount of cannabis that can be used while pregnant? And you can see on the slide there, it says there's no safe amount of cannabis that you can use while you are pregnant. And this fact is backed up by Health Canada, the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada, the Midwives of Canada, as well as the BC Centre on Excellence for Women's Health. But before we get too far into the specifics on cannabis use during pregnancy, I wanted to make sure that we all had the same background information on cannabis to support our learning. So this is a worksheet that was developed by the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, and we're going to take a moment to zoom into each of these little squares on the table. So let's take a closer look about the plant. So the plant, when I'm talking about the plant, I'm talking about the roots, the stem or stalk, the leaves, and the flowers. I'm talking about the whole thing. But if you want to get a little bit more scientific, the plant itself is called Cannabis sativa L, which is the original plant that cannabis has been derived from. And this plant has been broken down into 2 different strains. So the first strain that you'll hear of is the marijuana strain, or the kind of cannabis that you smoke to feel high or feel the different head rush or whatever feeling that you're aiming for when you're using this substance. The other one is hemp, and we just finished having a presentation on hemp. So if you're curious about the specifics about this product, definitely go check out our WRFN YouTube page, and it's up there for your viewing. But a little bit about hemp. Hemp is a stockier, thicker version of the Cannabis sativa L plant, and there is little to no cannabinoid called THC, which we'll talk a little bit more about on the next page, that is used to get high. Instead, hemp is used for things that are high in fiber, so things like rope, things like clothing. Hemp is now also being used in building materials, and it's fairly fire resistant from what I've heard. You'll also see different strains being talked about. Sometimes you'll see strains like sativa, indica, or hybrid, and this is just more about the feeling that individual can have when using this substance. So the active ingredients in cannabis, I've already talked about one of them, but when I'm talking about them, they're actually called cannabinoids. So cannabinoids that you hear most often are THC or CBD. So these two are very different. So THC is the cannabinoid that people use for the mind-altering effects, whereas CBD is the cannabinoid that can be used uh, for pain relief. You'll also hear about things called trichomes. So trichomes are the hair-like structures on the cannabis plant, and these were originally used for self-defense. So if the plant knows that there's a bug crawling on it, it can do whatever it needs to do, kind of like the hairs on your arm. But you also hear about ingredients like terpenes. So terpenes are ingredients that are the different smells of the cannabis. So sometimes you'll get a product that smells really earthy or piney. Sometimes you'll get one that smells a little bit more floral. Sometimes you'll get one that smells a little bit more citrusy. So terpenes are the main ingredient that is used for that. So different kinds of cannabis products. You can see on the screen that there are quite a bit of cannabis products on the market. So the one that you're probably the most common with is the cannabis bud or the dried flower. You'll also see capsules or pills. So this is normally CBD oil or some other sort of oil that is used in a pill form. Shatter and wax, these two aren't on the Ontario Cannabis Store as of yet, but they're really, really high concentrated form of cannabis that has been concentrated. And the picture on the slide here is actually a picture of wax. It's a highly concentrated cannabis product, and they definitely vary between textures, colors, thicknesses. You can also get things like oil at the Ontario Cannabis Store. Resin and hash, you can also get those there. Edible products, these are a newer product, and it happens when the cannabis has been heated and turned into a food or a beverage. Cannabis topicals are things that are lotions, so like hand creams, those sorts of things. So there are a couple different ways that you can consume cannabis, and the way that you consume cannabis will affect the way that, or the speed in which the product has an effect on your body. So if you are smoking cannabis using a pipe or a bong, you will feel the effects a lot quicker as opposed to eating the cannabis through an oral method, such as a capsule or pill, or through one of the edibles. So an edible, it might take an hour to 4 hours to start feeling the effect. So that's one of the things that we want to be cautious of, that we don't take too much because we don't think that there's any effect happening right now. Another way that cannabis is used is a drop under the tongue, or it can be absorbed through the skin from a topical cream. So there are lots and lots of different names that you can hear cannabis being referred to, and you can see a bunch of them on the screen here. And I think it's really important to understand what names are being used around here, especially because language is so important. We have to have the same language to know what we're talking about. So it's good to know which words are being used around Whitefish River. So some of the frequently asked questions that I've put on the slide here is cannabis use safe during pregnancy? So all the research that I've read suggests that there's no safe amount of cannabis exposure, and the effects on the baby can last a lifetime. But you do hear about cannabis and morning sickness. So is that safe? Is that something that can help with morning sickness? So cannabis isn't actually scientifically proven to reduce any of the symptoms. This is more of an anecdote where you hear people's experience about cannabis, and I definitely suggest talking to your doctor about safer alternatives. What about edibles during pregnancy? So whether you're smoking, eating, or using cannabis on your skin as a topical, there is no safe form of cannabis to use during pregnancy because cannabis is absorbed into your bloodstream, and the molecules in the cannabis can pass through the placenta and be carried to the baby. Is medical cannabis safer than recreational? So yeah, although medical cannabis prescribed by a doctor can be safer, it can also produce some harms as well. So I definitely suggest having a conversation with your family doctor. So this is an interesting one. Can cannabis use affect fertility? So cannabis use can affect both the male and female reproductive systems. For the females, it will affect our menstrual cycles, and for men, it'll affect our sperm quality. So cannabis should not be used while breastfeeding either, because it can be passed on from the milk to the baby as well. If you have any questions, you can definitely contact me at the health center or by my email. So how do we actually know the things that we know about cannabis use during pregnancy? So we will go through some scientific studies that can be used to study cannabis and pregnancy. So one of the top gold standard ways of doing scientific studies is a randomized control trial. So this would be where some people are using cannabis and some people aren't, but nobody knows who's using what. And putting mom and baby at risk like this is not something that can be used. So randomized control trials for pregnancy is not approved by the scientific community. So instead, or we go to cohort studies. So this is a group of people who are observed over many years. So let's say there's babies born in 2020. These babies could be followed over their lifetime at specific intervals to see how cannabis use has or has not affected their development or stages of life or anything like that. In a case control study, we don't have to follow people for multiple years across a lifespan. Case control case control case control compares people who have different conditions with people who don't have that condition but are otherwise similar. So if we have patient A and patient B, they are as similar as possible in their lifestyle, in their health habits, but the only difference would be that one of them smoked cannabis while pregnant, the other one did not. And then the last one, and this one is more widely used, it's more cost effective, is a cross-sectional study. And this is where you get a random sample and you ask them a survey. So this is sometimes done over the phone, sometimes done over email, or if you go to a specific website, they might ask you to participate in a survey. So there are currently 3 studies that look at prenatal cannabis exposure, starting from the latest one. So the Ottawa Prenatal Prospective Study. This was done in 1978, and this one was done in Canada. We also have the Prenatal Health Practices and Child Development Study, which happened in 1982 from the United States. And then in 2001, we have the Generation R study, and this one comes from the Netherlands. And these three studies were summarized nicely in the article cited below. This article comes from the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, Clearing the Smoke on Cannabis, Maternal Cannabis Use During Pregnancy. So the next couple slides will focus on this resource. So generally, 14.8% of Canadians over the age of 15 have used cannabis in the past year. And we do find that cannabis use is generally heavier during the first trimester, maybe when the parents don't know that they are carrying a baby yet. And once we find out we're carrying a baby, we do see that the cannabis use trends start to lower, they start to lessen. And why is this important? So you can see on the slide here, again, it's from the same resource as before, Clearing the Smoke on Maternal Cannabis Use During Pregnancy. You can see that at the age of 18 months, babies are showing an increased aggressive behavior, attention deficits, but these are only in females. The males, for some reason, don't show the same attention deficits. In children who are 3 to 6 years old, we will see verbal deficits, verbal reasoning, visual reasoning deficits, verbal and qualitative reasoning, short-term memory losses. These are children who also might be more hyperactive or have impulsivity. But if you go up a couple years to children who are 9 to 10, you can see that they don't have as strong of abstract or visual reasoning. Sometimes they don't have as high of executive functioning, struggling with reading or spelling. Again, you might see hyperactivity, impulsivity. You could even start to see depressive or anxious symptoms in youth as young as 9 and 10. When we move into our teen years, you can see that there might be some deficits in visual cognitive functioning. This could affect our academic achievements. These teens might be a little bit slower at processing information. They might also be a little bit more discoordinated. You might also see that these youth might be involved with our justice systems as well. If you're looking at teens and young adults, you might see some deficits in your higher order functioning. Sometimes you have a slower response. Sometimes they don't have as good of visual memory. Uh, Sometimes you'll see higher instances of smoking or substance use, and these are more likely to start substance use earlier in life. So none of that sounds fun. So we want to try to reduce the harms to our next generations. So it's important to remember that no amount of cannabis use is safe during pregnancy. However, I do know that people are prescribed cannabis for different reasons, and it's imperative or really, really important for you to talk to your family doctor about, is this the safest medication that I can be using while I'm pregnant? I also want to reinforce that harm reduction or helping ensure that our next generations are as healthy as possible is an individual, family, and community response. Sometimes when we are talking about prenatal exposure, we're only talking to the mother, and that's not fair. We know that wellness and connection is so much more than an individual action. We need to help support these families as a community. And one of the ways that we can do that is trying to limit the secondhand smoke exposure that this mom and baby are exposed to. So for general tips for harm reduction is start with a lower dose. And if you do uh, go slow, so this means start with a lower dose of THC. And if that's not the desired effect that you have or that you want, increase your amount slowly. Don't go in all at once. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. Again, my name is Jasmine Fournier, and I'm the health promotion educator at Whitefish River First Nation. You can contact me at the Community Health Center. Our phone number is 705-285-4354, and my email is jfournier@whitefishriver.ca. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great day.